Muscle and Fitness has ranked the 10 best exercises to get strong, and I'm here to tell you, are they right? And I'm also going to give you my top 10 list. Without further ado, let's get stuck into it and let's talk about what actually is going to get you strong. Getting strong is about moving the most amount of weight, using as much muscle as efficiently as possible. That's my definition. That's a universal definition when it comes to strength training. And those are the parameters by which I'm going to be reviewing these exercises. Now, the first one on the list, I assume that this isn't a top 10. This is just a 10. There's not a 1 to 10 ranking. The first one they've listed is the bench press. Now, this is definitely a good lift. It's good that it's a compound lift, good that it's a barbell lift. But the thing that I don't like about it is that you're supported by a bench. So the total muscle mass that you're using is mostly limited to shoulders, triceps, and chest, of course. If you're a really good bench presser, you can get some back involved, you get some legs involved. But for the most part, this is just going to be isolated to horizontal pushing movement. I do like that it's a fundamental movement pattern of life. That's good. I like that. Those are push, pull, hinge, squat, overhead press, and carry. But for me, this just doesn't quite make my list. The next one is a dip. Now, this is also not on my list. The good part about this, though, is it's easily performed, and you can do this mostly anywhere. The bad thing is if you're really strong, setting this up becomes really impractical. The shoulder range of motion required, if you don't have it, it's definitely high injury risk. And all in all, a bodyweight exercise is just hard to feel like that's what's truly going to get you the strongest. And I'll explain that more when I get to my top 10 list. Moving on to number 3, we're into the bread and butter now, the deadlift. The deadlift, it's heavy, it's a fundamental movement pattern, something we all do every single day. It's probably the exercise that you can lift the most weight in. The only exception is high-level powerlifters often squat more than they deadlift. But this has to be either number 1 or number 2 on any reasonable person's list of the top 10 best exercises to get strong. Now, the only downside to this is deadlifting can be dangerous. Robert Oberst is famously credited on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about doing deadlifts is something that people shouldn't do because the risk-reward ratio is just not there. Well, the risk-reward ratio, regardless of what it is, I'm going to have to pick my bag up off the ground. I'm going to have to help a friend move. I'm going to have to move a couch. Whatever it is, you have to be strong in a hinging pattern. The best way to do that is to get into the most controlled environment possible, into the easiest implement to move possible, learn good core bracing techniques, and then learn how to deadlift properly. That will make you safer for life, more robust, more resilient, and ultimately stronger. Of course, deadlift is on my top 10. Another one on my top 10, I said this has to be number 1 or number 2 on everyone, is the squats. Now, again, this is a heavy fundamental movement pattern, and most people lose their independence when you can't sit down or stand up from a toilet. So from life, great. For performance, whether you're a powerlifter and squatting is one of your events, or you're a strongman and squatting is going to contribute to other events, I found this to be the foundation of strength across the board. Of course, it's going to help with squatting events. It's going to carry over to deadlifting. It's going to help with your atlas stones. It's going to help with any sort of triple extension, whether that be overhead pressing or throwing. It's going to help with moving events because if your legs are strong, you're going to be able to move weight better. It's also the best core exercise when they do intramuscular EMG studies. That and deadlift, again, number 1 and 2 for core strength, which, by the way, is not hindered if you wear a belt. Wear a belt, push into that. That actually increases core muscle activation, thereby making your core stronger. Now, the downside of squats is the technique must be learned. It's not as simple for most people as a deadlift. Oftentimes, you can sort of get to a half squat. It's a bit awkward. Where do you put the bar on your back, etc.? But if you need any help with that, I have a 100% free guide I have in the description and in the pinned comment for you to be able to get your squat into a good position. Next one, they've put a step up. This is number 5. Step up is probably the most confusing one on the list. It's definitely great for hip strength, for sure, but you're going to use less than half of the weights when you go to a single leg movement as you do in a full body movement. So back to my criteria of I want to use as much muscle as efficiently as possible to move as much weight as I can, and that's the definition of getting strong. Well, something like a step up is not really going to fit the bill because the weight is going to be so low. It can be a great exercise to help focus on your hips, but if we're going for overall total strength, squatting is going to be better. This is not to say there's no place for step-ups or split squats or anything. Great for correction, great for specific hip strength, but if we're looking for the 10 best exercises to build overall strength, I don't think step-ups should be on the list. In number 6, we have the bent over row, definitely an underrated movement for strength, and something that I do have on my list with a slight variation. The best part about this is, of course, you're moving the barbell, but a big part of maintaining a good bent over row focuses a lot on your spinal erectors, a lot on your core strength, and a lot on your posterior chain, your glutes, hamstrings, calves, to be able to hold that position while you're rowing the barbell. Really, really good. Now, the only downside that I will rectify in my top 10 list is a standard bent over row is limited by spinal erector strength. Number 7, we have pull-up. Now, pull-up and dip, they're going to mostly fall into intellectually the same category for me. It is the best overhead pulling option, for sure, which is not a fundamental movement pattern to me, because there's never a time where you have to pull down from over your head. But it does help keep good, healthy shoulders. The issue, though, is a pull-up is simply going to work your biceps, your rear delts, your lats, your lower traps. So it's great for shoulder health and great for those particular muscles. But the total load that you could use is so much lower than in other movements that there are probably other things that you could be better off doing. Now, again, I think this is the best overhead pulling motion. It's also easy to cheat. It's easy to do the thing where you sort of pop your legs up all the way up to kipping pull-ups in CrossFit. Now, it's not on my top 10 list, but it is my number 1 honorable mention. I think it's a great exercise, but if we're just purely going off the basis of getting strong, it's not on my list. In number 8, we have military press or standing shoulder press. This is great because it requires full body control, a lot of core control, great shoulder range of motion. It will help to keep the shoulders healthy if you can perform a good, clean military press. Now, the bad thing is it can be a little bit dodgy if you're off balance, if you lack the core strength, if you lack the coordination. It's also very easy when you're military pressing to get your elbows too far forward. And so if you look from the side, it almost becomes a tricep extension off your shoulder, which limits the overall strength. You have to work on opening your thoracic vertebrae, directing your eyes up to the ceiling, and then press and come through after you've locked out. I do like this exercise, and it is on my top 10 list as well. In number 9, not necessarily number 9, but the ninth one that they've listed is the shrug. Good side of shrug, if you use straps, you could use very high loads. The bad side of shrugs is just a very, very specific isolation movement. It's not on my top 10 list for that reason. All you're doing is stressing your ability to elevate your scapula, to raise your shoulders. This isn't necessarily what I would define as what's going to help you get strong, purely strong. And the last one they've put here is close grip bench press. A variation of bench press. It's just going to be more tricep work. It's a great exercise. Just like the bench press is a great exercise, I don't see how this has to be listed as a separate entity to bench pressing. The one misnomer with close grip bench press is that if normal bench is here, anything closer than that is a close grip, okay? Close grip. As soon as you pass your shoulders, as soon as you're in tighter than your shoulders, this is not a place you want to be in, yeah? You don't need to be in the kangaroo pressing position. You always want to be nice and outside your body. Elbows tucked. Great for the triceps, but now we're getting even more isolated than a bench press. Your back is supported, total musculature used, relatively low. That is why it is not on my list. So, what is my list? What are the 10 exercises you should be doing if you want to get strong? Let's get stuck into it. Number 1. Now, this is not ranked in order, although it was off the top of my head, so the ones earlier listed are probably the most potent. Number 1 is squats. I think this is great for performance across the board, for any athlete, for any individual, and for any strongman. Squatting is something you need to be doing and a fundamental movement pattern of life. Number 2 is deadlifting, also included in the muscle and fitness list. You need to be deadlifting. I don't care if you're watching this video and you're 60 or you're 20 or you're 15 or 100. You need to be learning to pick things up off the ground in a safe manner, whatever that looks like for you. Now, your core bracing needs to be correct. Your hip hinging needs to be correct. Your programming needs to be correct. There's a responsibility of getting in the gym and working hard. And if you're not responsible, deadlift is one of them that bring it out. But it's not because the deadlift is bad. It's because your irresponsibility is getting exploited. Number 3 is overhead press. Now, they call it military press. I'm saying overhead press. This is a standing overhead press. I only differentiate that I have no problem if it's a push press or a strict press. I think both are very efficacious and both will help you to get strong. Again, fundamental movement pattern of life. In number 4, it's going to be my variation on what they wanted to do with the shrug, and it's going to be a farmer's walk. It's going to work your traps, it's going to work your grip strength, it's going to work your single leg strength, and it's going to work your core stability. A much, much better alternative than just shrugging alone. So farmer's walk is definitely on my list. Now there's a couple in here, this is bias, of course, from the strongman world, but it's in the name. Strongman, we know how to get strong. What we do makes us the strongest man in the world and made me the strongest man in the world in 2023. Number 5, I have yoke. For those who don't know, a yoke is an apparatus where you put it on your back like a squat, but then the objective is to walk with it, not to squat with it. Great for core control, great for hip strength, great for core stability. And for me, something like a yoke is going to work on your hips while building total body strength, much better than something like the step up that Muscle and Fitness proposed. My next exercise is the leg press. There's no getting around that the leg press is the absolute highest amount of weight that you're going to be moving in the gym. Most leg presses are 45 degrees. So if you have a 45-degree leg press and you're leg pressing 1,000 pounds, that's the equivalent of squatting 500 based on trigonometry. Squatting 500 pounds for someone who leg presses 1,000 is going to be a push. It's also going to be limited partially by technique, by core strength, by stability. On the leg press, you can just push. And when it comes to getting strong, you want to learn how to push to your maximum, and you can do that on the leg press. In number 7, this is my variation of the bent over row. It's the Pendlay row. The difference here is that in every rep, the bar drops down to the ground, and you focus on the concentric movement and let the bar fall all the way to the ground. You're doing a deadlift up to your knee, and then carrying the momentum and pulling as hard as you can up to your stomach. The finish position, same as a bent over row, but start position is bar on the ground. The reason I like this, like I said with the bent over row, is that it's not predicated on your spinal erector strength. It's also going to be working your rowing power. And it's also going to be reinforcing your deadlift position, a fundamental movement pattern. That's why I'm a big, big fan of Pendlay rows. We got 2 strongman events left. The first one is the arm over arm sled drag. Again, a little bit more niche, but this is where you have a rope and we're pulling and gathering and pulling and gathering. And for me, in terms of building pulling strength, this is going to be great. Upper body pulling strength, along with grip strength, along with what I'm going to call functional strength, which is a buzzword that is used far too often, but simply, could this strength translate over to many other things? In the case of an arm over arm sled drag, it absolutely could. And it covers us off on 2 fronts for pulling towards you. One with the Pendlay row, which is cheating a little bit because it's carrying momentum, but this one, much more strict arm over arm sled drag. Also, building anaerobic capacity for you to be able to do more work in all of your other lifts because you're getting out of breath, because you're working very hard for anywhere between 30 to 60 seconds. And if that capacity goes up, your capacity to recover from everything else will go up as well. In number 9, you won't be able to do this at a commercial gym, but Atlas Stone. I cannot have this list without mentioning Atlas Stones. It's a deadlift off of the ground, a front squat and an extension. You have to squeeze. This is in terms of total body strength, this is an incredibly good test of strength. The only downside is it's highly variable and highly dependent on how tall you are and how long your arms are. There's big advantages there. But if you're just a person looking to get strong, getting out there, getting yourself a stone, getting that over a bar, that's going to be an incredible way for you to build strength. And rounding out my list, I have overhead press, standing overhead press in the list, but seated barbell shoulder press is my last one. Working on strict upper body strength. We got the shoulders and the chest involved. We still have the core involved because we're not just going to be slouching back on the seat. You definitely want to be on the seat, but there's going to be a lateral stability component. And it's a way that you can remove the element of being able to extend your back too much and turn it into a bench press, like I famously did, and work on that pure shoulder strength. Now, I would love to know your guys' thoughts. Please sound off in the comments. And if you want a program written by me, that's in the description and in the pinned comments. I would love to have you on Team Moose. As per always, lift heavy, be kind. These shoppers in the channel, appreciate you guys. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow.